The second thing he says is, you can't kill this character. I'm like, okay. And then I looked at it and I'm like, well, that character dies. And then there's this funeral scene. And that funeral scene is not going to get cut from the book. So I went back and killed somebody else.
I was going to say, someone's going to die.
Welcome to the Two Authors Podcast, an entertaining chat show hosted by best-selling mystery and thriller authors Douglas Pratt and Nicholas Harvey, in lively, humorous and informative conversation with distinguished guests who share their thoughts and experience about forging a successful author career.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Two Authors Podcast, brought to you by me and him. And who are you?
I'm Doug. Who are you?
Hi, Doug. A couple of numbnuts bringing you a podcast. We have a great show this episode, a guy that I've been following for a while, great author. We'll get to that in a minute. As always, the show brought to you by the fabulous formatting software Vellum, which if you're not using it, what are you thinking?
Well, your books probably look like crap.
There we go.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. So.
Hey, update. Recent update.
Pretty cool, yeah.
I love it when these updates come through because one thing about Vellum, and I know they sponsor the show, so you're like, oh yeah, they're just playing them up. But the reason they sponsor the show is because we love them and we went to them and said, hey, would you partner with us because we believe in your product? And they went, yeah, that's a good idea. So I love it when I get updates from them because they listen to what we're saying. So if you're an author and you use Vellum and you want to see a feature added or adjusted, email them. They listen. They truly listen to everything we send in, and they try and make if they get a consensus, they'll make that update. So Vellum 4.1 was released probably a few weeks now by the time this show comes out, but it expanded heading controls. So images in your headings on each page is like start chapters and stuff.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to get it tight in there.
So there's new stuff for that. I haven't checked it out yet. Improved word import.
Wow. Because their word import is already pretty on point.
Pretty solid. Yeah. The only thing that I can't wait to try it on my translations, because on my translations, it worked really well, especially when they taught me through how to do it properly and get the formatting right in Word, because it was a little tricky. I was doing something wrong.
It's usually my fault. But maybe this is trying to fix the Doug stupid factor.
Yeah, if it's the Doug and Nick stupid factor, we are beta testers for this stuff. I mean, we'll break anything anyone gives us. So, all right, and then some more refinements shaped by your suggestions. So that's the key. The Vellum folks, they listen to the author input. Also, big thanks to our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for supporting the show. We really appreciate it. A few dollars a month goes a really long way in helping offset some of the costs involved in bringing this show to you. So if you think there's some value in it, pop on over to patreon.com, the Two Authors Podcast. There's a free tier. Just jump in there, check it out, and see what's around and see if you like being over there. And then you can step up to the paid down the road if you feel there's value in it for you. Our guest today, I'm excited about this, is contemporary national security thriller author David Bruns.
That's quite a title there, man.
Yeah. He writes some really cool military thrillers with his co-writer. We'll chat with him shortly, but first, a listener question from our recent guest, the one and only J.D. Barker. J.D. Barker, thanks for sticking around and coming up with a listener question for us. I'm a little scared what you've got, so come on.
No, this is one that I'm honestly very interested in when I talk to other authors. How do you figure out what book you're writing next? You just finished up whatever your latest project is. You just closed the cover on it. You're done. How do you decide what the next book is going to be?
I can take a little piece of that. So as an indie author with 3 series, my writing schedule is planned out for at least 12 months because of the way we do pre-orders in the back of the previous book. So that clock sort of sets back. So I already know, but the decision still has to be made. It's just made at a different time. So right before I'm done and put out the next book in the series, I have to know what the title and a basic concept of the following book in that series will be, and it won't get written for another 3 to 6 months. But that's when you have to make that decision. And it varies how difficult that is, because sometimes the idea, you don't have that idea burning in your head for this next one. But sometimes it's really obvious what should be the next one. And for me, with my Cat Cromwell series, I just released a book in that on Tuesday. So I had to do a pre-order, and the pre-order is The Girl on the Last Bus. This little idea of this story of a young woman who never speaks to the driver, but always gives him a polite nod, travels on the last bus out of town 6 days a week. And so they've known each other for months and months and months across a year. They always see each other, never spoken a word. One evening, she runs onto the bus. Looking behind her, he closes the door and pulls away. And then that's the last time he ever sees her. So this is a much bigger explanation that you're looking for. You're looking for but this is what really excited me. I had this idea burning, and exactly what happens down the road, I'm not sure. But that was enough to go, that's going to be the title, and that's what the book's going to start with.
Well, that's how it works, right? Like you get that one idea and it just starts nagging at you, and you can't get it out of your head until you put it down on paper. And then it's like exercising a demon.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
can be the beginning, can be the end, could be just something that happens in there. You just need that one spark, right? How about you, Doug?
I will say, like we obviously face the same thing. We're both indies, so we do schedule out about a year ahead. But there are other stories, kind of like to branch off to be a little bit different. Is there are other ideas, and like JD said, these things get in your head, and I've got a couple ideas I've gotten written down that I want to squeeze in, and I'll count them as the extra because these are the ideas that have been lingering in there that I've been playing around with for months or years sometimes. Before I kind of get around to putting it down. And so I had to balance it, obviously, with the financial decision of which books are going to make the money, because that's what I live on. And then to what I want to really write about, what that story is that I'm just dying to put down on paper. It's a little bit different. And since and Nick and I both write mainly in series, it's, we kind of had to keep those focused. And so it's a little similar to what he said. I get one little idea that I'm like, what can I do with Chase? What can I put him in? What kind of position can I put him in that's going to be different? And so I think that's just kind of what we got to look at, because you're trying to take a character we already have and just carry him to the next book. Well, what can I do to him this time that's not the same thing? I think Mark Grady said one time, he goes, when I start writing a book that's the same scene where the hero's running through with the same gun through a hotel lobby for the sixth time, then it's time to change everything up. So I think that's really kind of it.
What about you, JD?
I cheat. So I've got a document. I've got this document of basically ideas. Whenever I come up with an idea for a book, I always come up with the title, the tagline, and the back of book blurb. So 200 words that would appear on the back of the paperback. It's probably about 10 pages long, but these are all ideas that I would like to write. But then I call my film agent, and we hash it out, and he tells me what the people in Hollywood are looking for. Because he's in a ton of pitch meetings. So he'll go in on a pitch meeting for Project A. And, before that meeting is over, the people in that studio are going to say, well, we're looking for this, this, or this. If you happen to run into this, this, or this, send it our way. So we use that information to figure out what the folks in Hollywood are looking for. To give you an example, like Behind a Closed Door came out of that. He started coming out of all these meetings where the folks in Hollywood were telling them that, sex in cinema has almost been like on a pendulum. Back in the 90s, it's way over here with Basic Instinct, Fatal Attraction, those types of movies. And then in present day, like it's almost completely the opposite of that. And as a pendulum, they feel that it's moving back in the other direction. So they were looking for stuff like Basic Instinct. So we sat down and we came up with the idea for Behind a Closed Door from that document. And then just kind of flushed it out. And it's worked well. I mean, he's been able to option pretty much everything that I've written that I've handed off to him.
That's smart. Very
That's
smart.
Brilliant.
Yeah. That's planning. That's some thinking there. So
Yeah. I feel like we're in second gear, Doug, and JD's flat out in fifth. That's kind of my racing analogy of how we're going about things. JD, thanks a lot for sticking around and giving us a listener question.
Thanks for the reference to a manual transmission. I'm sure half your audience probably doesn't understand what that is.
David Bruns, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
I am great. Thank you for having me. I've been a long-time listener and a Vellum user.
Oh, wow.
Oh, look at that.
Brad. Look at that.
As a matter of fact, I bought Vellum because of you guys. So you can tell the Brads.
That's right.
You can tell the Brads they have at least one sale from you.
We have one listener and one sale. This is perfect. We're at 100% ratio.
1 for 1. 100%.
That's right. At this kind of rates, we should be they should be all over the place. Man, we should be selling everything.
What else you got to buy?
It does help to have a really good product.
It does. It does.
Yeah. It is amazing. I mean, seriously, no baloney. It is an amazing product.
We certainly believe in it, and that's why we have a partnership with them on the show.
I'll take a stack of used 20s now.
Yeah. Brad's will drop you his address. All right. So give us a little bit of background on how you, on your career, because it's definitely a career that's moved paths, and how you first got into writing and when you were first published.
I went straight from high school into the U.S. Naval Academy in the late 80s. So this was at the height of the Cold War. Graduated in 88 and went directly into submarines. So at the time, when we talked about the threats to national security, especially in this is like the height of Tom Clancy. When we talked about the threats to national security, what we trained on was number one, the Soviets, number two, the Soviets, number three, the Soviets, and then everybody else. It was like, that was literally all we talked about all the time. I was on the USS Baton Rouge when the Soviet Union fell in late 1991. And all of a sudden the submarine force is like, oh my God, what do we do now? It was a very serious discussion within the community because they literally did not really have another serious threat. And, things were in such chaos at that point. So I got out of the Navy in the mid 90s and went into the private sector. I worked in the tech sector for about 20 years. And then during a combustible meeting with a CEO that I had worked with for about 4 months, I decided I was going to make a huge life change. I lit myself on fire, ran out the door, and decided to become a writer. Not a career choice I would recommend, by the way. So it was actually worse than that because I used to have a high travel job. And when I say high travel, I mean literally every week I was on an airplane. And I got home and I was home all the time. And my wife is like, a week later, she's like, I'm going to kill you. You are driving me crazy.
Can you go somewhere, anywhere?
She said, you have got to find something to do. And I said, yeah, I'll volunteer at Habitat for Humanity. She says, no, you have said for the entire time I've known you, we'd been married 30 years at that point or something like that. For the entire time that I've known you, you're going to write a book. Go write a book. I'm like, that's a great idea. I mean, I literally have zero excuses. I had started, I don't know, half a dozen novels over the course and life always intervened. I am not a person who can divide my time. I have to work on one thing and work on it kind of exclusively. And I was like, I have zero excuses. So Monday morning, sat down on my computer. I'm like, okay, pulled out one of those trunk novels, put it up. And I started writing, got a couple chapters in. I'm like, I need an outline. Couple more chapters. I need a better outline. And sort of went from there. And so when I finished it, it wasn't a very good novel, but I met somebody who helped me self-publish it. It is no longer available. But
all those first ones are.
By the time I got to, so that was like in the spring of 2013, I think. By the time I got to the fall, I'm like, no, I'm going to do this. This is what I had always wanted to be a writer. Ever since I was, a kid. I can remember when I was 7 years old, the first chapter book I ever finished was The Hardy Boys' Secret of the Old Mill. And I finished the book. It took me a couple of weeks because I was, going through it all on my own. And I finished it and I'm like, that's what I want to do. And 40 years later, I actually did it.
That's great.
So I wrote a science fiction series of 3. It was called The Dream Guild Chronicles. So it's sort of like science fiction fantasy. And I went to a Naval Academy Parents Association meeting with my current co-writer, JR. We were there as guest speakers for them. And the topic of that morning was, what is your kid going to do when they graduate from the Naval Academy? So I was the guy who had done my commitment, gotten out, had a private sector career. JR had been a naval intelligence officer for 21 years, did a ton of cool stuff. So we did our bios and I did mine, 6 years in submarines, got out, blah, blah, blah. Now I write science fiction novels. JR starts talking. Like 15 minutes later, he finishes his bio and he had been in all these operations, been on this carrier, this large deck amphib, was an intel officer for Special Operations Command, worked for the CIA in Bosnia, did all this cool stuff. And someone in the audience raises their hand and says, you two should get together and write a book. And I'm like, oh my God, that's a great idea. So I invited him to lunch and I pitched the idea to him. He's, oh my God, I was hoping you were going to ask me. I thought the same thing.
Oh my God.
And so we started writing together from that point. It was spring of 2014.
Wow.
And we wrote our first book in about a year and figured out how to co-write, which is...
That's a challenge.
We've
got some questions on that later because we've got a great interest.
Which is a contact sport, right?
Yeah, exactly.
and then crowdfunded it and published it. We had intended to do one novel. It was like a bucket list thing. And at the end, we're like, you want to do that again? Yeah.
Might as well.
Now we had zero thought for book number 2. We're all about book number 1. Zero thought. So we're like reading the paper one day. This is 2015, 16. At the time in Minneapolis has a very large Somali community. And they were having a serious problem where kids would like go to school, and the next time the parents heard from them, they were in Turkey joining ISIS.
Oh my God.
And they were being recruited online. So we wrote a book about homegrown radicalism called Jihadi Apprentice, set in the Twin Cities with one of the characters from our first novel.
Oh my God.
It was fun.
What a brilliant story of how you guys met. It's like, I mean, total fate. It seems like, yeah. Seems like it. Okay, so
we were just in a bar, and I said, "Hey, you want to write a book together?" And Nick goes, "Not really."
We're 2 drunks in a bar.
So Jared doesn't drink, so the bar thing is out.
Yeah. Nick doesn't drink either, so I do it for him. So
over a glass of kombucha, he says, "Oh, do you want to write together?"
That's perfect. So now I know you went to Clarion West, which has a fantastic reputation for sharpening writers. How was that experience, and what are the sort of big takeaways you came away with that with?
The experience was fabulous. So at this time, I was writing with JR, and I was really trying to keep up like a second line of speculative fiction, science fiction. So I applied to them. So I should back up. Clarion West is a 6-week in-person, basically writing summer camp, where they select 18 students. And the year I did it, we lived in a sorority house on the University of Washington campus. So 18 people live together, and every week you have an established author come in and run classes for that week. And basically what you're supposed to do is write a story a week. It's short fiction, speculative fiction. You write a story a week, and then people's stories are due on different days of the week. And in the mornings, you have critique sessions. So you go around the table and you critique each other's work under the guise of this established author. And it was a fabulous experience. I mean, I made some really great friends there. So it's a 6-week course. So from, if you submit a story every week, you come out of there with 6 vetted stories, which you can then submit. I think that the thing that really, in addition to, friends, I think the thing is that you really learn how to critique, and you really learn how to dig into a story, because you're basically reading something north of a first draft and trying to help them shape that story. And more importantly, you learn how to critique. The group I had was fabulous. I mean, there was probably, so I was like the dad of the group. I think I was 50 or 51 at the time. This is 2017. So there was like half of the group was like mid to late 20s. There was a handful that were in 30s. There were a handful in their 40s, and I was grandpa. So is that, I mean, you have the communal living experience, you have the communal writing experience, and then the whole critique experience wrapped around it. That can be pretty combustible. Yeah. So from like the moment you walk in the door, they have this sort of training about not scapegoating somebody and not excluding people. And I'm like, they're really overdoing this. And then you talk to some people who have been in other cohorts, and it can get awful. I mean, there are people who literally leave. One woman told me a story about, this was a few years ago, told me a story about a cohort she was in, and there was one woman who was ostracized, and she actually wrote a story featuring everybody in there and left it on her pillow when she walked out the door.
Oh my gosh.
So it can get bad. It can get bad. The cohort I had was amazing. I mean, just to a person, they were just so generous. And I mean, I really learned how to be a generous critiquer from a couple of the people there. Shout out to Izzy. Just how to talk about a story in a way that doesn't make the writer feel defensive about it.
Yeah. And that's good, because a lot of people, like you say, there's a lot of critique groups that come out as toxic, and they can be dangerous. So, and I'm sure you've tired of kind of answering this question, but we're going to have to hit you up anyway, because you're the only person we know who met Tom Clancy. And obviously, you've got to tell us a little bit about that. So,
yeah. So, I was a plebe at the Naval Academy in 1984. Which means that that I went in for induction day on July 1st, had plebe summer. The brigade comes back the end of August, and then the full brigade is there. It's like 5,000 students. Hunt for Red October came out in October of 1984. So I was in, my first classes, and one day our English instructor said, there's a new author who's being published by Naval Institute Press, which was Tom Clancy's first publisher. It's fiction, but it's about submarines, and you can get extra credit if you go after evening meal tonight. I didn't need extra credit, but like the good brown noser I went anyway.
Right.
So you show up, and it's in like an arena style thing. I don't know, maybe 50 or 60 midshipmen there. And this dude walks in. So we're used to thinking of Tom Clancy today in his later years when he was a commentator on Fox News with the sunglasses and the ball cap and the cigar and the brash sort of, this is what the Soviets are doing. And, and he was not that. He sold insurance in I think it was Severna Park, Maryland.
Yeah.
So it was quite close.
Yeah.
Comes in, he was very self-conscious, did not make eye contact, had sort of the droopy 70s glasses on, didn't make eye contact. When people asked him questions, he would sort of meander away. And I'm thinking, so later, when I saw him later, after he had had all this tremendous fame and everything and how he had changed, I was just fascinated by it. So I did buy a book that night, and it got lost in a move somewhere. But it was signed.
Like first edition,
Yeah, first edition. But, when you move that much, eventually, I'm sure my wife threw it away, probably. Yeah, she just lost this box of books. We have too many. This one's not going.
This one's totally like,
yeah, when you move boxes a few times, those books get heavy.
Exactly. And I got a lot of books.
Okay, so off air, before we began, you started telling us about a guest of ours that we had on, the lovely Kate Quinn, and you got to meet her. And this spun into a fantastic story. You got to repeat it.
So I was fortunate enough to meet Kate Quinn. She was doing press for the Briar Club. This was probably 2 years ago. She was in Minneapolis. It was at like a theater. And I went and listened to her speak. She's great. She was an trained opera singer. And she did a little aria for us right there. It was tons of fun. Anyway, I was like, there was probably maybe 60, 70 people there. I was like one of four guys. Anyway, I knew she had mentioned during the talk that her husband was in the Navy in San Diego. So when I bought a book, I, deliberately stayed back towards the end of the line. So I was like one of the last guys. And I talked to her for a couple of minutes, told her I'd been in the Navy, told her what I do. She signed it. We had a little chit chat, didn't think anything of it. So I'm writing our next book. It's called Line of Succession. And the premise for the book is that there's an attempted assassination on the president of Russia. And the CIA realizes if this dude gets knocked off, there's no number two. There is no plan of succession. So there's going to be 5,000 live nukes just waiting for the next Yahoo to come into power. And I was trying to think about how we were having this asset trying to get close to the leaders in the Kremlin. And it was a young woman. And I got, man, what if I used Kate Quinn as a cameo? So I wrote to her and she responded and she says, this is great. Please do it. She says, just don't make me look like I'm pro-Russia. Because apparently after she published The Diamond Eye, she got people saying, why are you glorifying Russia? She's like, I'm not glorifying Russia. Yeah. Diamond Eye was actually one of my favorite books. And I actually used that in our book. So these two, the case officer and the asset, bond over shared love of reading, especially love of Kate Quinn. And the way that they recruit her is Kate Quinn comes to the UK for a reader's weekend in a castle owned by this billionaire who's also working with the CIA. And that's when they try to recruit her to come work for the CIA as an asset.
You just set up a billionaire romance. Where are you going with this? I thought you wrote military attack stuff.
A spinoff. So yeah, it was, and she was so gracious about it. So it was a lot of fun. There's a book in the mail for her. Hopefully it gets there. It has to go through several layers of agents and publicity people now, but hopefully it'll show up on her bookshelf one day.
Fantastic. I'm sure it will. That's a brilliant story. All right. Let's we got loads of stuff we want to ask you. So let's talk about the military stuff a little bit. So as a former submarine officer and you co-write with a former Navy intelligence officer, have you guys ever dived into a plot, got going and then realized we can't write about this? We'll get a knock on the door if we write about this. We're not supposed to know this.
Yeah, so one of the benefits of working with JR, who has a very extensive career, and he's done a ton of stuff, most of which he still can't talk about. He is super careful about that. So, however, occasionally he sends me a news article and he says, "Next time we're together, ask me about this," because something that had been classified is now public domain or something like that. It doesn't happen often. So when we get together, we game out the story together. We talk. We meet a bunch of times, talk through it until we have sort of a generic story arc, and we can describe to ourselves a beginning, middle, and an end, and maybe some tentpole moments. And then we get down to like hardcore outlining, like chapter 1. This is the point of view. This is where it is. This is the plot point. And then we identify any research that I need done because I do the draft. So when I'm happy with the outline, then I go through and I draft it from start to finish, chapter 1 to chapter 60, whatever. And then we edit it together. The nice part about working with someone as knowledgeable as him is both in the planning stages, we can really vet a lot of ideas about what we do and don't want to put into a book. But also, as I'm writing, if there's something I don't know, Navy SEAL bursts into a room, pulls out his insert name of gun here and, shoots the bad guy between the eyes. When he goes through and he does his edit, because it goes into a shared folder, he edits it, puts it into another folder. Or I just put in a line, I need a description of this, or punch this up. This needs work. So he goes through and does that. When we started writing together, and this is again a credit to my writing partner, I think it was actually in that first lunch, we had two principles. One was we wanted to stay friends. So if the writing ever got in the way of friendship, we were just going to can the whole thing. But the second one was we wanted to be authentic. And when we talked about it initially, what we thought that meant was technically accurate. So if you're going to describe something, you want it to be technically accurate, you want it to be feasible. And we have discussions all the time because we describe our books as near future, so 4 to 5 years in the future. So we're constantly sort of projecting what is going to be available based on unclassified public domain. Even if we know different, we only use public domain knowledge. But we're constantly saying, could this really happen? So like in a book we wrote, Order of Battle, it was about a Russian invasion of Ukraine. We had robot dogs, which were airdropped in behind enemy lines.
We had robot dogs in a book we just wrote together.
Yeah. And at the time we had a long discussion about this is science fiction. So this was before the actual Russian invasion of Ukraine happened. And now it looks like we were holding back. So it's kind of crazy. But as we went deeper into the series, we realized that the authenticity thing is actually more about how you depict the characters in settings. And I think it's become even more critical because current events have sort of muddled what the military does and what the military can do and what those people really stand for. And there's so few people who have actually served. I think the big number is like 1% of the population, but the reality of it is much smaller than that. I come from a military family. I served. I have a brother who was career Army. I have a brother who was career Air Force. All three of us married women who were active duty. My nephew's on active duty now. My dad was active duty. So that's one family. So when you're thinking of the 1%, it's actually much, much, much smaller because it runs in families now. And I think it's very stratified. So a lot of people, when they read our books, are getting an introduction into what it means to be in the military or having a mission-driven part of your life, I guess.
It's interesting. So you're published through Seven River, and Andrew Watts was on the show, who runs Seven River, great little publishing house. And he was former military, and he was talking about the same thing. One of the things in his books is you take basically a career or 5 people's careers of incidents they might happen to create the action in one book, right?
It's kind of touch back on what you kind of said. A lot of your books obviously about like ordinary people, ordinary men and women doing, call it extraordinary things, but you also deal with these big geopolitical things. So how do you keep that human story from getting buried under all the details of this big geopolitical machinations that go on kind of concurrently, I guess? So
yeah, so we tell it through an individual character's eyes, which is really so I had a writing teacher once who said something like, come for the story, stay for the moral. And what readers identify with is what's happening with that character. And you put the layers around it, you put the context around it. So you're learning something about what's going on geopolitically at the same time as you're really sort of in the nuts and bolts of what this guy's going through. What does it smell like? What does it sound like? What does it feel like? What's the level of danger and the pucker factor?
So you touched on it a little bit earlier, the co-writing and the rule is we've got to stay friends. What have you found are the keys to doing that? Because, Doug and I co-write together and we do some presentations on co-writing and kind of how we've seen it. I'd love to hear your experience and some of the avenues gone down where it's got tense, right? And how do you pull it back in line?
Yeah, so I've actually done another co-writing project with a guy named Chris Porteau. And we did a series of 6 sci-fi novels. So the thing that really stood out to me after I compared the 2 experiences, Chris and I are still friends, is that what you think you're getting into and what you're actually getting into are rarely the same thing. So for example, when Chris and I started writing together, he has an editing background. And we were sort of like doing a modified rapid release thing where I was going to write the first 3 novels. He was going to edit them and then he would write the next 3 novels. And while I wasn't going to edit them, I was going to sort of help him along the way. And it turned out to be not that, because what happens is what we said we were going to do was I was going to write, he was going to edit. What actually happened was I wrote and he rewrote. And then I got it back and I'm like, wait a minute.
Hey,
now, to be fair to him, he called me and he said, and I was busy on another project. He called me and says, yeah, hey, I really think I can punch this section up. What do you think? I'm like, yeah, sure. Knock yourself out. And then I got it and I'm like, I don't like that. So I mean, you really need to internalize what your boundaries are. And it's very difficult to do that up front, because part of the reason why we were co-writing was because we thought we had very similar styles. And while the styles are similar, they're not that similar.
Okay.
But what saved us in that relationship was we were very clear up front. So we didn't have a contract, but we did have a memorandum of something. But basically, we wrote down, if this happens, this is what we want to do. And one of the things we did was we said who had editorial control of what books. So if we got into a discussion about, I want it this way versus you want it that way, the person with editorial control had the final word. Now, with JR and I never really had that formal of a discussion, but we've been working together so long. The way it works out is if it's a story or a technical aspect of it. So if it's technical about technique or operations or sources of methods, it's JR. Period. He has the last word. If it's a story craft thing, generally I have the last word. If it's a turning point in the story, we just have to work it out. And we've had very few arguments, actually. But we've also settled into very defined lanes now, where when we go to work on a book, we know what the other guy is supposed to do and just sort of seamlessly hand it off. Because we've been doing it for, 12 years now. So.
Yeah, right. It's one of the things we talk about in our presentations is respect is the key word, right? You've got to respect. And laying it out up front as much as you can and dividing the duties all the way through the process. So not just, okay, we're going to, because everyone dives into this and goes, okay, well, you're going to write this, you're going to write this. Okay, yeah, but who's going to edit what and who gets to say, like you're talking about?
You got to push your ego back a little bit too, because it does.
Yeah, I mean, so when we do a co-writing presentation, we title it, How Do 2 Type A Ego-Driven Personalities Co-Write a Book Together Without Killing Each Other?
That's ours was the same thing. How do you write together without killing each other?
Yeah.
Although I'm not type A, Nick is type A, and I'm type, I don't know what you'd call me, but like F somewhere in there. So.
Captain Cruise Control.
It's pretty laid back, so. So you also have done a lot of short fiction, dozens of short stories, like you talked about working with Clarion and stuff. What has short fiction taught you, though, about pacing, openings, scenes? I guess the economy of words that we don't use that we would use as a novelist that we kind of compress down for a short story.
Yeah, I love short fiction. It's sort of fallen out of vogue today. I mean, not as many people read short fiction as they used to, and I think that's kind of a shame. So short fiction captures a moment. So in a book, you have many moments. You have different emotional beats, different plot twists. In a short story, you generally have one. So what it taught me certainly was the importance of an A story and a B story, and how you marry those up. And you use the word of economy, and I think that's critical, because you can blather on in a novel, you can't blather on in a short story. You've got, I mean, every sentence needs to be doing some lifting, whereas in a novel you can get a little looser, and you can sort of ride the wave a little bit. In a short story, at least in my experience, you really can't do that.
Although I also, Blather On is the title of my next book, just because it's going to be
His next
probably
name.
Doug Blathers On. It's still going to call it that. Just Doug Blathers On. So
I also, part of the reason why I really got into it for a while was I wanted to try out some smaller ideas to see if I could develop them into novels. Early on, I really had a difficult time trying to figure out what was a novel versus a novella versus a short story. There's nothing worse than getting into a novel and realizing that the idea that you're working with isn't big enough to make a big enough story. Whereas in a short story or in a novella, you can work on that and see if it goes somewhere without spending a couple of months on it and finding out, yeah, maybe not, cowboy.
There's a big difference between short story, novella, and novel, right? I mean, in a novel, you want those downbeats where that you give the reader a breather and catch themselves and what have you. And in a short story, it's go, 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 go from the, you escalate throughout the whole thing. And then the novella is somewhere in between where you want little breathy moments, right? Because you've got enough space for it, depending on how long they are. But generally speaking, if we're talking round numbers like the 10 or 12,000 word short story and then a 30,000 word novella and then 70,000+ words in a novel, right?
Yeah, and when you're selling short stories, especially if you're early on, your sweet spot is more like 4,000 to 6,000 words because you're being paid by the word, and if you don't have a track record, they're willing to take a chance on something that costs a little bit less. So that economy portion really becomes even more important.
Yeah, and there's still a market out there for the short story stuff. I have a friend of mine who is in the romance field, and she writes a story a week, publishes one a week, and they're about 10,000 words she normally does, and she's a machine, and she's doing really well doing that. Yeah, so there's still a market in some areas for it, that's for sure.
I've been trying to do my hand at them, so
you've been doing a great job with them and doing them through your Patreon.
Yeah, so. Yeah.
And then there's things you can do with them afterwards, put them in an anthology and what have you. So they are great exercises. They're fun too. They're fun because you get to dive into a story. And
so the one I'm working on right now is going to be more of a short novella because it was too big for a short story. But I had this idea, but like he says, it's too small for the whole novel. It's just it was not going to be big enough a story for that. So I was like, you know what, this would be good as a somewhere in between short story and novella, but perfect for my Patreon page. It gives them something that they can like munch on between books. So
another area that I know we've had some conversation about, you talked about crowdfunding early on in your career, getting it launched, but you've also done some Kickstarters or are involved in a Kickstarter, correct?
We did 2 Kickstarters, one for each of our first 2 books. That was 2015.
Oh, wow. That was early on, yeah.
Yeah, that was before people really latched on to Kickstarter authors. It's much more common now. If you follow Russell Nolte, he's sort of a Kickstarter machine. I'm involved in a pending Kickstarter this fall, which is going to take first novels from established series and package them repackage them as sort of a first edition, new covers, new material, and get those out to readers. That's not available yet. It's still in the formative stages.
Cool, exciting. It's and when we touched on this a little bit off air, you were talking about doing in-person events and stuff, and we just came away from a chat with some other authors last week where there was a big focus on expanding your IP and finding different ways as it becomes trickier and trickier through Facebook and Amazon marketing in the mainstream to find other ways of income streams. And you're doing personal events now quite a bit, yeah?
Yeah, we started about a year ago realizing that if we wanted to sort of cement a readership, it was getting tougher and tougher. I mean, the thing that we all as authors, since we started being authors, have dealt with is discoverability. So a person can't buy your book if they don't know you exist. And we've solved that. First, you solved it through social media, then you solved it through paid ads, then you solved it through Patreon. But fundamentally, technology catches up. And today, AI, I think, just makes the whole problem worse. You have AI generated books or AI assisted books, whatever, and AI generated ads, and making no comment about whether those are of good quality or not. They exist and they're clogging up the system. So the discoverability problem simply becomes harder. And when I sat with that for a while, I realized, okay, the way that you want to find a reader and you want to cement a reader as somebody who wants to follow you, so when you publish a book, they're going to show up, is by meeting them in person. And yes, it's hard. A lot of these we're doing as soon as we're done here, I'm going to do an event in a town south of here where we're doing an author talk. And next week, we're actually going out to Rapid City, South Dakota to do 3 events. That was generated by a reader who contacted us and said, so let me back up. Last fall, we got invited by a reader to be the keynote speaker at the reunion of the USS Seawolf, which was a very famous spec ops submarine in the 60s, 70s, 80s. And that was a tremendously successful event, both in terms of meeting people, but we had, I think it was 12 people out of that group bought our entire 7-book series just like that.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah, which was tremendous, right? And of course, we signed them all. So, I mean, does that pay for the cost of 2 guys going to Las Vegas for 2 days? No, it doesn't.
It covers the buffet one day, so.
Right. I mean, but those readers are there for the long term, and they'll read the entire catalog, everything we have out now and everything that comes out after
that personal touch you get with that does mean that once you do that, they're going to be they'll follow you everywhere they go. So yeah,
I mean, so if you've ever been to an event where you met an author and you read their book and you admired their book and you follow them, Kate Quinn. I went to Kate Quinn's event because I was a Kate Quinn fan. I'm a ride or die Kate Quinn fan now.
Yeah,
right?
Super fan.
Exactly. And so it's the same thing. It's incredibly time consuming and detail oriented and expensive. But I honestly don't know. We're saying, okay, this is what AI can't do. AI can't shake your hand. AI can't sign your book. AI can't tell you a story person to person, and they can't look you in the eye. So let's do that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are taking that.
Plus, it's fun.
That's right. Yeah, no, it's nice. It's neat, talking
right?
to fans is always it's a load of fun. So yeah.
All right, this has been fantastic. It's so good of you to come on and share all these stories with us. We have 2 questions to fire at you that you've probably heard us do. So first of all, what do you feel is your author's superpower?
So I did know that this was coming, and I've got a weird one for you. Funeral scenes. Okay, very cool. So at the end of several of our books, we have a funeral scene. And we get more email about those funeral scenes from veterans, I'll tell you, and some of them are heartbreaking. It is people talking about stuff that happened, and they said, one guy just says, I just read that chapter and I was sobbing. And I'm like, oh my God. I did that.
Yeah, that's power. Isn't it?
Really
it's
cool.
really a great feeling.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a great feeling, or it's not a great feeling, depending on your point of view. I am so committed to funeral scenes that when we sold our book to St. Martin's Press, right, and we had it edited, and the editor who bought it said you only have to change 2 things. Thing number 1 is the title. The title of the book, our working title, was War.exe because it was about cyber warfare. We went back and forth and finally settled on rules of engagement, which I still don't like, but okay. The second thing he says is, you can't kill this character. I'm like, okay. And then I looked at it and I'm like, well, that character dies and then there's this funeral scene, and that funeral scene is not going to get cut from the book. So I went back and killed somebody else.
I was going to say, someone's going to die. Yeah.
And full credit to the editor at St. Martin's Press. That character, her name was Janet Everett, went on to be in almost every single one of the follow-on books.
So they're smart.
And she's now a Commodore of a submarine squadron in the book that we're writing now.
And the great thing is you picked up a sponsor. So Jones and Walton Funeral Homes now sponsor all of David Bruns' books. They're based in Minneapolis. If you have a death in the family, stop by. You get a deal.
If you want to bring tears, if you want to bring tears to your family, then just follow him.
Bruns has a QR code you can use for a discount. All right.
He probably ends up getting like a whole plot for it's part of the deal. I get a plot.
The Bruns lines of Coppins. All right, we're going off on a bad tangent. All right, Doug.
Yes.
Doug has a wheel of questions.
We have the wheel of questions.
The wheel.
And occasionally we cheat these questions just a wee bit depending on the guest. So but I'm sure this is completely random.
Completely random. So
I love the way Doug just looked at it like he didn't know what it was going to be.
I did. Well, I'd make sure it stopped.
It's a full setup.
my own writing.
We're not even on video, and full commitment, Doug. I love it. Go,
Yes,
man.
but then you go and throw the whole thing off because I'm ready to go into it. So
Reading from
why'd
the
I even
card,
bother
yes.
spinning the wheel if we're just going to play just ruin the effect? God damn it!
We've pulled the veil off the whole show.
This is why partners are a problem. This is why. You can't follow the
Can't
script.
even act out. All you had to do is pretend like we were going to do that. The random question is, what's the best military series or movie that you've seen lately?
Wow, what a coincidence that came up.
Lately.
You can give us what's the worst one, too. There's plenty of really bad ones.
How is Down Periscope as a submarine movie? How did that compare to Hunt for Red October? That's what I want to know.
So Hunt for Red October, honestly, is a phenomenal adaptation of a book because it actually made the story better. If you read Hunt for Red October, the book, the ending is quite confusing. It's not confusing. They streamline it in all the right places. And fun fact, so I met Tom Clancy in 1984. 1990, when the movie came out, I was in submarine school in Groton, Connecticut. And the base rented the local movie theater for the afternoon, Friday afternoon. Everybody went down. So wall-to-wall khaki in the auditorium, and the submarine breaches, everybody stands up. It was awesome.
There has been some good submarine movies. There's been plenty of bad.
Yeah, Crimson Tide.
Crimson Tide, Das Boot was freaking phenomenal. You got to watch it in German with subtitles. And then going way back, Silent Running, right? And that was pretty close to the book. The book's fantastic.
Silent Running or Run Silent, Run Deep?
Run Silent, Run Deep was good too.
Yeah, Run Silent, Run Deep. That's it. This has been brilliant, David. Thank you so much for spending the time with us. And we'll see you again soon.
Take care. Bye.
That was a pleasure. What a super guy.
Oh, man. Yeah. Pretty awesome.
Such an interesting background. And the way he met JR and they started writing together, that's brilliant. And what a bank of knowledge between them.
Man, that's so much vaster than the bank of knowledge between you and me. So,
well, together we make about 3/4 of one brain. So, can you imagine their network of contacts? Though, people they can just
for sure.
Call and go, "Hey, unofficially, can you tell?"
Yeah, I'd like to know. Yeah, I think it's fascinating. I'm kind of like you. Submarines have always fascinated me. I've put subs in my books before. You've done the same thing, but I'm by no means an expert. But it is fascinating. Just the idea that people could go, and we had some questions for him about that we didn't even touch on about his service on them. We could probably talk for hours about that. So
yeah, we'll have to have him on again to talk about it. But one thing that really resonated was they want them to be true to accuracy.
Yeah, the accuracy,
and I like the way he sets it near future. So the technology is real, and gives them a wee bit of license if they're near future.
And it's got to give them a little bit of challenge even to cover the geopolitical things in the near future. Because,
moving so fast.
Like he said, he's talking about we did this and then now Russia's invaded Ukraine, and that everything just changes in the last few years since they first started this. And if you went back far enough, the same thing. He touched on that too in the 90s when Russia was the enemy and then suddenly they weren't. The geopolitics are fascinating, and he does a really good job of weaving that in there. So
the good thing is what they do is engaging, really interesting, entertaining stories. So no matter how they shift, it's what I see. What can happen, right, is it seems dated. When a book is 5 years old, things have changed so much that it can feel dated. But nothing feels dated when you're being thoroughly entertained by a novel. And obviously with their success, they're doing a fantastic job at that. So yeah, no, that was great. All right, guys. Thank you. Hope you enjoyed the episode. Please drop over to patreon.com. Take a look at us over there, Two Authors Podcast. Follow us. You can follow us for free and just check it out. We're going to do some neat stuff in the next couple of weeks for everyone over there, free and paid levels. So check it out. Get on board. and follow us there if you would. Huge thanks to Vellum. And,
I love Vellum.
How about the plugs? I swear we did not know that David Bruns was going to be a huge fan of Vellum and plug him in that way, but we are very happy that he did.
Yes, it's so nice to hear that people are like, oh yeah, listen, because I am constantly, just every day, somebody asks this question somewhere, like, how can I format my book? And I just write Vellum. Full stop. Just
mic
go
drop.
Vellum.
Mic drop. Yep. All right. In the show notes, you'll find links to all that stuff, David's books, and where you can find them, Vellum links, our own books, and all that good stuff. So until next time, be cool to each other.
Fair winds and following seas.
You've been listening to the Two Authors Podcast with Nicholas Harvey and Douglas Pratt. Subscribe on your favorite platform for new shows coming every week.